Now, have you ever been faced with lots of fear, shaking, and also anxiety while in an interview or even about to deliver a public lecture? That's called an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders are the commonest psychiatric illnesses there are in the world, affecting adults and children. Over 60 million people have or suffer from anxiety disorders, and many go untreated, despite the fact that these disorders are highly treatable. On the show today, we are addressing anxiety disorders. What are some of the causes? How can they be treated? Do we have some counseling? And how do we prevent ourselves from getting or being anxious when we are about to do anything? You're welcome to be part of the show. Talk to us. Have you ever been anxious? Are you anxious, and how do you address it? Then call us live. The number to use will be displayed right at the bottom of your screen. Use the hashtag #MyDoctor to talk to us on Twitter at Ebru TV Kenya, at Purity_Museo. You can also choose to be with us on our Facebook page, which is Ebru TV and Purity Museo. Ebru TV Kenya, I repeat, and Purity Museo. My name is Purity Museo. You're right on time for. And how many times have you cancelled your plans as a result of anxiety or fear? Then today on the show, we address anxiety and fear. And joining me in studio is Dr. Ruth Mwaura, a counseling psychologist, who will be helping us see how do we address anxiety. Is it a disorder? And if yes, what are the treatment options? You're welcome to be part of the show. The number to use is right at the bottom of your screen. Use the hashtag #MyDoctor to speak to us on Twitter at Ebru TV Kenya, at Purity_Museo. Now help me welcome our special guest to the show. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruth, for joining us. We are talking about anxiety and fear, but just before we could get into deeper, is there a difference between anxiety and fear, or how do you define them differently or separately?
Okay, when it comes to anxiety and fear, I think for fear is the fear that you have. But when it comes to anxiety now, it is excessive fear.
Okay.
Yeah, so when it comes to anxiety now, the fear that you had now becomes excessive. Yes.
So you're now anxious.
Yes.
So is it a disorder, because you're talking about excessive fear? Now does it become a disorder, and what is anxiety disorder?
So you find most of the time you find that when it comes to anxiety, we all experience anxiety every other day. When you have to go for an interview, when you have to make a speech, anything that you have to do, sometimes you find that you experience anxiety. But now this is normal, the normal anxiety that a person has. But now when it comes to anxiety being a disorder, it means now this fear or worry is there constantly. Then it affects your day-to-day activities. So the normal anxiety doesn't affect your day-to-day activities. You get anxious because there's something you're supposed to do. Then over time, the anxiety just goes away and you go back to your normal functioning. But when it comes to now anxiety being a disorder, you find that this person now every other day, they have the anxiety. Then it interferes with their day-to-day activities.
No matter what they do,
yes.
they're anxious about it. So do we have the only two categories of anxiety, the normal anxiety and now the excessive fear, which you're saying it's a disorder? Or how do we categorize anxiety?
Okay. So you find for one to be said they have anxiety, this has to be something that has gone on for a period of time. So I can't say that because now I need to do an interview or now I need to do something to solve a problem and I'm anxious, that is an anxiety disorder. No. So for us to say now you have anxiety disorder, it means it has interfered with your day-to-day activities. Then also it has made you not able to do what you're supposed to do. Then also the duration. So you find that for anxiety to be a disorder, it has gone on for a period of more than 6 months. So that every other day you have this anxiety that makes you unable to do your day-to-day activities. So the duration is very important, and is it affecting your day-to-day activities? So if it is not affecting your day-to-day activities, we can't say that is anxiety disorder. But when it is affecting your social life, your job, your relationship with people, now we say that one is an anxiety disorder. Yes.
But Doc, there are a category of people, it's not constant for them, but each time they want to involve themselves in an activity, like you said, an interview or even a public lecture, they get anxious. They just you're well prepared, but you just can't do it. You're anxious. Is that normal?
It's very normal, because you find the way our brain is set up, anytime there's something that you need to tackle, anytime there's a problem you need to tackle, your brain releases chemicals, the stress hormones called cortisol. So So you find that most of the time when you have something that you need to do, there's that chemical that is being released into the body. So when it is released into the body, it helps you so that you're able to tackle whatever you're supposed to do. But you find most of the time you will be anxious, but once you are on stage, then you need to do it, you're able to do it. But most of the time now for it to be a disorder is that maybe you're supposed to do an interview, you're supposed to do a public speaking, but now you don't do it completely. You're anxious, but you don't do it completely. So now that one becomes a disorder.
It becomes a disorder.
Yeah.
So a disorder doesn't mean that every time you are anxious, but it means that when you're doing that particular thing, each time you go, you find yourselves in an interview or you may be speaking in a public place, you're anxious. That now becomes a disorder.
When it comes to anxiety, the anxiousness that you have before you do something, that is normal. For it now to be classified as a disorder is that now it affects what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
Maybe, for example, you're supposed to do that interview, you're supposed to do that public speaking. Now anxiety will be there because now you're thinking, what will I make it? You know, what will people say about it? Will I deliver what I'm supposed to do? But now for it to be a disorder, it's when now you completely do not do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or it affects your performance.
Yes,
the way you had
yes.
prepared yourselves, then you don't do as at how you had prepared yourselves.
Yeah.
So what causes anxiety really?
I think there are a lot of issues that cause anxiety. Stress itself is also one of the leading causes of anxiety. So when you feel that every other time you're stressed, there's this normal stress that you have, that we have, all individuals have. But now this is accumulated stress that you are always having each and every time. So you find that that causes anxiety. Also, personalities. You find because of how a person is, their temperament. That person is always a person who is always negative. I don't know if you found people who are just negative at life. They are critical about everything.
Never see anything positive in any situation.
In any situation. So you find that those ones are predisposed to being anxious because every other time they're expecting something bad will happen. So they're always on the lookout. They're always thinking something bad will happen, so always alert. So you find those ones are predisposed to anxiety. Yes.
And Doc, also, because you've talked about the people who are predisposed to anxiety, then who are the eligible candidates for anxiety in terms of the age bracket and also gender? Do we have a specific bracket of age group that are really at a risk of getting this kind of a disorder, and also gender, male or female?
Yeah. So studies show that women, compared to men, women are at higher risk of being anxious or having anxiety disorders. Then they also studies also show that anxiety starts mostly at the teenage. So between the ages of 14, 15, 16 there, that's where you find that most people now develop anxiety disorders. There are those ones who develop them in adulthood, but mostly it is during the early years, the teenagehood, the adolescence age. Yes.
Let's now get into details to talk about the signs and symptoms of anxiety. One, how am I able to tell that my friend or my, my sibling or even my child is anxious or having anxiety disorder? How can I also say for myself, am I able to say, I think this is a disorder, this is not just okay, it's not just normal to be this? At what extent, how do you tell signs and symptoms? Do you have typical signs and symptoms for anxiety disorder?
Yeah. So you find most of the time you find that when it comes to anxiety, there are categories. So you find in anxiety there are panic attacks. You find in anxiety there are phobias. So you find somebody has phobias of heights, phobias of animals. They cannot do anything because of those phobias. You also find there are those people that have social anxiety, where you find that this person now cannot even go out there. Anytime they need to go a place where they feel that somebody will criticize them, somebody will scrutinize them, somebody will judge them, they have those fears. So most of the time you find that when it comes to symptoms of anxiety is that, first of all, you find that you have issues with your digestive system. So you find that you're anxious and you want to run to the toilet, you feel that you have diarrhea, you feel there's just that stomach upset. Then
What's
you
the
find,
link?
Yeah.
What's the link between anxiety and really rushing to the toilet? It really happens. It's very common.
Yes,
What's the link?
You find that it's now the chemicals that are being released into the body. So you find that at that particular time when you are anxious, the body now, the mechanism, the processes that are supposed to be done are not occurring, because now the body is alert, because there's something that has threatened our well-being. So the brain has sent chemicals into the body that there's an impending danger, which we need to either fight or flee from. So you find that these chemicals are being released into the body. And now you find that now you have those digestive problems where you need to run to the toilet, you are coming back. There's something, just feel your digestive system is not okay, because the chemicals are being released to the body. So other processes that are supposed to be done in the body are not occurring. Yes. Yeah.
And for the symptoms, other than what you've talked about, do we have other symptoms for anxiety disorder?
Yeah, so you find that most of the time you feel lightheadedness, you feel like you're going to faint, you feel your muscles are so tensed, then you feel that you have shortness of breath. You find that you're not able to breathe well. Then sometimes you feel you have headaches. So you're feeling you have headaches, you feel like you're dizzy, you feel like you're having shortness of breath, you feel like there's something that is going to happen that you cannot control. Then most of the time now the digestive system. Then also you find that now also sometimes your immune system is affected. Yeah.
And when you're anxious, it means that you're not confident enough to do what you have to do. So, Doc, I'll ask you, how bad? What does it mean to have the disorder or to be anxious? What are the effects? What can't you do once really you are anxious? What does it stop one from doing and from achieving?
Yeah. So you find most of the time when it comes to anxiety, you are not able to do your day-to-day activities. So this anxiety makes you so fearful and so worried that whatever you're supposed to do, you are not able to do it. So maybe when it comes to your job, you find that you're doing your job, yes, but not the way you used to. Because there's always this constant worry that you might fail. There's this constant worry that you not do what you're supposed to do. So you find that the work that you're supposed to do, you are not doing it. So it interferes with your day-to-day activities, interferes with your relationship. Because now you find that when it comes to, like, for example, social anxiety, this person maybe needs to go out there, maybe needs to go for a date, needs to meet with friends. But because of this fear of being judged, this fear of being criticized, they end up canceling the dates. So you find that maybe this occurs once, but it is a continuous thing. So you find over time what happens, these persons' interpersonal relationships are affected. Because now people are always like, they will make plans, but they will not come. So over time what happens, people tend to start withdrawing from this person. Maybe you find that also this person needs to do activities, but they are not able to do because it interferes, because of the worry. You're always fearful that something will happen. It is either a perceived threat or it is there, but that makes you not able to do what you're supposed to do. Also, it predisposes you to heart diseases, because when we said when it comes to anxiety, there's a chemical that is being released to the body, because now your body and your brain is alert. Because what happens is that anytime you have you're anxious or something, there's something you need to address, all the activities, all the processes in the body stops for that particular time, so that now the brain can focus on dealing with this problem. So you find that for that short of period of time, it is good, because now energies are concentrated to solve the problem. But what happens over time? Over time, this concentration of energies, this body being alert, you find out this person now becomes predisposed to heart diseases, because now the blood is not being pumped the way it is supposed to be pumped. Also, you find that people that are always anxious constantly for a long period of time, they're also predisposed to having strokes. So you find that because of also the fact that the blood is not flowing well in the body, you find that stroke is one of the effects that one can have because of being anxious.
And that's what you need to be addressed. Oh, you had more? Sorry for cutting you short.
Then you find that also the immune system is suppressed, because anytime the body is alert, the brain now functions and the body functions are not ongoing well. So that's why you find that most of the time now this person becomes vulnerable to colds. So you find that every other time this person has colds, that they take medication, but it's not going away. That's when now the doctor asks you, are you okay? Are there stresses? Are you anxious? Because now the immune system has been suppressed. So you become bacteria, viruses are easy to enter your body.
Yeah. And let's get back to the causes of anxiety.
Yeah.
Most people believe, for example, if you're going for an interview or it's a public lecture that you have to deliver, lack of preparedness or preparing yourself really is one of the causes or the factors that lead to one getting anxious. Do we have truth in that when you don't prepare yourself, for example, even for an interview like this one, then you end up getting anxious because you do not know what you're really going to face there? Do we have some truth in that?
I think that can be an explanation, but also you find that there are people who prepare very well.
Yeah.
But now when it gets now to doing it, it becomes a problem. Because now you've prepared, yes, but now you're anxious because the self-talk that you have, you're telling yourself, will I make it? What if I fail? What if I become anxious? So the more you're thinking about it, the more it is giving you the anxiety. So you find that over time you've prepared this interview, you've prepared for this public speaking, but because of the self-talk that you're having, the things that you're constantly telling yourself that are negative, eventually now you become anxious to a point now you're not even able to do what you're supposed to do. Yes.
And let's talk about anxiety and esteem, your esteem, your self-esteem. How does anxiety affect your self-esteem? Because you mentioned earlier on that once you're anxious, then you believe, you think you cannot do it. That's why you're fearful. What's the link between the two, Doc?
So most of the time you find that when somebody is anxious, they also have low self-esteem. Not to say that anyone that has anxiety has low self-esteem. No, but you find that most of the time because of the anxiety and because of what you're telling yourself. So you find that it has a link, anxiety and low self-esteem. So you find that somebody maybe was prepared, but now because they have these constant worries that they are not going to perform, what happens? Their self-esteem lowers. To a point now, whatever they were supposed to do, they are not able to do because now their self-esteem is so low, but they no longer don't believe in themselves as much as they were prepared and they thought they would do it. But now at this particular time, they are not able to do it because their self-esteem has gone down. Yes.
And now you've talked about the impact of anxiety to even your health itself. And earlier on you had said that sometimes it's normal to be anxious. I'll ask you, is there a way that we can be anxious-free? You know, you just, yes, the fearful one, not the one that you're just about to do something and you're really up to speed, you don't know how it's going to happen. But not the anxiety that you're talking, the fear of doing anything. Is it okay, or is there a way we can be anxiety-free? You know, you told, you know what, you're going to deliver a lecture in the next 1 hour and you're like, fine, let me just prepare. You're so composed. Is there a way out for that?
I think it depends. It depends with the person, depends with the preparedness. I think it just cuts across, but we can't say like we can be free like from anxiety totally, but we can always have those small anxious moments, but we are able to overcome. Yeah.
And the family orientation also. Is there a hand of family? For example, there are people who are introverts, others are just extroverts. Would you say that an introvert person, there is a high possibility that this person will not, let me not talk about the disorder, but is anxious? Is there a link also between introverts and anxiety?
You find, not per se, but you find that people that are introverted kind of are at a risk of maybe developing anxiety, but not everyone. Just because they can't expose themselves too much, they can't speak too much, they can't express themselves too much, they might have a risk, but doesn't mean that totally those people that are introverted have anxiety. Yeah.
And what are now the risk factors? What are the contributing factors to anxiety?
You find there's always a lot that contributes to anxiety, and you can't pinpoint per se that this could be the reasons why this person is having anxiety. So you find that the personality of a person can predispose that person to anxiety. Those people that are always worrying, you know, we call them chronic worriers. It doesn't matter what is happening. They're always worried that something bad will happen, no matter what. So there's no threat that something bad is going to happen, but they're always worrying, what if this happened? What if I knock somebody? Maybe I'm driving. What if, you know, always on the alert. So you find that those ones are predisposed, higher risk of being anxious. Also, the day-to-day stresses, those ones that are unmanaged. You find that the day-to-day stresses, most of the people can be able to overcome, and they're always there. But you find that over time, this person has an accumulated stressors that are not being dealt with. So you find that this person now becomes predisposed to anxiety. Also, they say genetics. Maybe you have a family history of a psychiatric illness or an anxiety disorder in the family. So you find that this person can be predisposed. But it doesn't mean that if you have a family history, you will, but you are at a higher risk when you are compared to somebody who doesn't have a family history. Yes.
And Doc, you said that sometimes it's just normal to be anxious. What do you consider normal and what do you consider abnormal?
Okay. So you find that most of the time, the normal anxiety, the anxiousness, is where that you're supposed to do something, so you become anxious. Will I perform it or not? But over time, what happens? Once the problem is solved, your functioning goes back to normal. But now, for it now to be a disorder, is that this anxious or the fear or the worry is there constantly. For example, I'm supposed to do an interview. I am anxious. Then I'm able to do it. Then I go back to normal functioning. But for this other person that now has a disorder, is that they are always having anxious moments.
And you're not able to do what you're supposed to do.
Exactly, and it interferes with your day-to-day activities. Then the duration. So we can't say somebody has an anxiety disorder because today they had an interview and they were anxious. But for someone to be diagnosed with anxiety disorder is that 6 months.
Okay.
Constantly, you're always worried. Then this anxiety is causing you not to do your day-to-day activities.
All right.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we'll have a look at the diagnostic part of it, treatment options, counseling, and how do we prevent ourselves from getting anxiety if in any way we can. My Doctor Show continues after this short break. And welcome back to the second and the last part of the show. Our topic of discussion today is anxiety. We are addressing anxiety. Sometimes you just wake up and you're unable to do what you ought to do, and that's what we want to see. How do we address it? Are there some treatment options? And also, is there counseling for anxiety? In studio, we do have Dr. Ruth Mwaura, a counseling psychologist who is helping us with the discussion. Welcome to the show. Talk to us on Twitter at EbruTV Kenya, at Purity_Museo. Use the hashtag #MyDoctor. We'll be glad to sample some of your questions and respond to them. Welcome to the show once again. The second and the last part. We've really defined what anxiety is, what are some of the symptoms and the causes, and you've said the prolonged fear is what is now anxiety. So how do you diagnose anxiety?
So you find most of the time is this person maybe goes to the doctor, and you find now the doctor is able to ask questions like, how long has this been? Is it a day-to-day thing? Is it something that has interfered with your day-to-day activities? So when it comes to diagnosis of anxiety, this person is asked questions of the duration and also how is this interfering with their day-to-day activities. Then you find that sometimes they are given questionnaires where they're able to fill. Then the doctor scores. So from that, it shows where they are.
Where they are. And also, when you are anxious, first of all, when do you need to see a doctor? You know, I'm constantly doing this particular thing. I'm anxious. I can't do it. I love doing it. There are some people who really love speaking, but they will just not speak before people because of anxiety. when do I need to see a doctor? Is it when I've tried the first attempt and it's not working, or how many times should I try before I consider seeing an expert for that?
Also, like we've said before, individuals go through moments of anxiety. Anytime that your brain perceives a threat or there's a problem that needs to be solved, you find that most of the time you become anxious. But now, for you now to be able to seek help, is that this anxiety is interfering with your day-to-day activities. The things that you ought to do, the things that you used to do and you are good at, now you cannot do them completely. So you're supposed maybe to go out for a date, and you have always been going for dates. But now because of your anxiety and the fact that you feel that maybe people will judge me, something bad will happen, I will not be able to control myself, you find that you cancel the date. And it's not once, it is always a constant thing, that every time you need to do something, you are not able to do it.
So it's not something that you're trying to do for the first time. It's something that you have been doing, but this time round, it's different. So how does it develop?
So you find
what
that,
happens? Just take us through what happens in the body, because I don't understand how I've been doing this and then all of a sudden there's so much fear and I'm anxious. At some point I will not be able to do what I'm supposed to do. How does it develop? What happens with our body when we are anxious?
So you find anytime that we are anxious or anytime we need to solve something or there's a threat, you find that our brains, they release a chemical that is called cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So anytime that there's something that needs to be done, that's what happens to our brains. But over time, what happens is that the more you become anxious about something that ought to be done, the more now this chemical is being released. And the more the chemical is in the body, the more it's preventing you now from doing other things that the body ought to do. So you find that this is a constant thing. But most of the time it is released because you're supposed to do something. But now this one becomes something that every other time this chemical is being released to the body, affecting other functions of the body. Yes.
All right. And now let's get to the treatment. You've diagnosed this person, some of the symptoms as a doctor that you are seeing. So do we have specific treatment for anxiety? Do we have medication in the first place? Or how is the treatment like?
So you find when it comes to anxiety, medication and therapy, which we call psychotherapy, they go hand in hand. So you find that once you've gone to the doctor, because you find most of the time people will go to the doctor, they won't come to a psychologist or a psychiatrist first. They first go to a doctor because the symptoms that they're having, the physical symptoms, make them feel they have a physical illness.
Maybe once again you can tell us the physical symptoms.
Yes.
There are headaches.
Headache. So you find this headache. You find this person is having digestive issues. You find this person now has dizziness. You find sometimes even somebody can faint. So you find that all these symptoms that they're experiencing, they think now this has to be a medical issue.
So they opt to go for medication.
Exactly.
So what happens there?
So you find once the person now goes to the doctor, after the doctor has done the diagnosis, which we said now they ask the questions, the duration, how long has it been, how is it interfering with their day-to-day activities, then they also do questionnaires where this person is able to fill them. So you find that this person
and I'll cut you short once again, Doc. If, for example, they go for example, I'm having a headache and also diarrhea and I go to a doctor, of course, I'll go to the wrong doctor, So do we have some misdiagnosis for anxiety? You go to the wrong doctor, I get some tablets for my headache, but then the problem still persists, you know? So am I getting treatment for the wrong, am I getting wrong medication for the wrong condition, or how would you address that?
Sometimes you find that because of the physical manifestations that are being presented by the patient or the client, when that most of the time the doctor maybe is quick maybe to look at the physical symptoms, and sometimes they overlook the mental health status of this person. So you find because somebody is complaining about the stomach aches, complaining about the headaches, they are given medication. Then you find that over time this person is not improving. So you find that now the doctor is able to now go back and ask, are there issues with your mental health? And ask questions that are related to mental health. But sometimes you find there's that misdiagnosis because maybe the doctor is not able to look at the mental health perspective when they are looking at the
Which
overall.
in most cases happens. So what happens when you go off? You get some treatment for your headaches, for diarrhea. So what is the long-term complication? If it's really not diagnosed well and treated, you'll tell us the correct treatment for anxiety. But if I don't get the right treatment, which will be getting to counseling, what next now for me?
Yeah, so you find that most of the time when a person is having anxiety, which is untreated, now it complicates into other physical ailments. For example, now when you said stroke, heart diseases, suppression of the immune system. So you find untreated anxiety can lead to other physical illnesses. Yes.
Okay. So what's the correct treatment for anxiety? Yeah.
So you find that most of the time when you go to the doctor, they'll ask you a lot of questions. They'll also, because sometimes you find somebody can have all these symptoms, they think it is anxiety, but maybe it is a physical, it's a real physical illness. So you find that the doctor will do other tests first to identify, are there issues? Are you having maybe issues with your heart, issues with your respiratory system? So they'll do all these tests to ascertain that you do not have a physical illness. Then once now they're able to do all these tests and they find that they're negative, now they're able now to look at the mental health aspect of this. So now they will ask you all these questions. Then we find that when it comes to medication, most of them are given either an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety. Because sometimes you find that anxiety, they coexist with depression. So you find that this person is has anxiety, then what happens over time now, they get into depression. Because they're always anxious about something happened, to a point now, depression also sets in. So you find that the doctor is able to ask a lot of questions concerning their well-being, the mental health well-being. Then they're able to see, is this person having anxiety or there's also a comorbid depression. So that now they can be able to treat the two. Yes.
And let's now help someone at home. Let's say the symptoms that you said, I have them, I am expressing them. And of course, counseling comes with this.
Yeah.
So what's the counseling journey like? I have come to your clinic and you've diagnosed me with anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
Take me through the counseling journey for such a person.
Yeah, so you find that most of the time when now this person has come, either because most of the time you find that they are not coming direct to us. Maybe they have gone to a physician, then the physician has seen them. Then you find that most of the time those ones that are able now to understand this is mental health, they give medication and also they refer this person for mental health psychotherapy. So you find that now when that client comes to us, we're able now to, we also do our diagnosis. Also, we take a lot of history just to get to understand what has been happening in this person's life. Because sometimes you find that childhood traumas, maybe physical, sexual abuse, can predispose this person to anxiety, especially now when they come into now teenagehood, adolescence. So you find that when it comes now to therapy, we're able to identify which are these problems, so that we can now start doing problem solving. Identification of the problems, then we also explore how can this person now be able to solve these issues. Also, most of the time you find that when it comes to anxiety, there's also the cognition, especially when you talked about the self-talk. Find that most of the time now this person is having negative self-talk. So we're able to identify what is happening in this person's mind. What are they constantly telling themselves, so that we can be able to get a connection between their cognition, their thoughts, their feelings, and their behavior. Because anytime you're having this person now, let's take an example of the interview. They're supposed to go do an interview or a public speaking. So what are they telling themselves? That I will fail. This interview will not go well. I will make a fool of myself.
Is that true? Is that what goes?
Sometimes you find that is what is going on through this person's mind. But they're able maybe to get over it. But now it comes a disorder because now this person now completely is not able to do what they were supposed to do. So we are able to address the self-talk of this person so that they can get the connection between their thoughts, their feelings, and how they affect their behavior. Yes.
And just before we get to the self-treatment, one of our viewers was asking whether anxiety is inherited. Is it genetic or?
So like we said, when it comes to mental health, because first anxiety is a mental health disorder, then you find that a person can be predisposed, but doesn't mean that any person that has a family history of a psychiatric illness will have anxiety. But having a family history of anxiety, family history of a mental illness in the family predisposes this person, or this person has a higher risk of having the disorder than any other normal person. Yes.
Let's now get to the self-treatment. You said that once you are anxious, you're able to speak to yourself and say, I am going to do this, I am going. And when you're anxious, then when you are not able to do that, then it hinders you from doing what you're supposed to do. Do we have some self-treatment measures for that? Yeah.
Yeah, there are things that people can do at home just to help them with that anxiety, so that now the anxiety cannot move from the normal anxiety to now the disorder. So you find most of the time we say exercise. Exercise goes a long way in terms of helping, because once we said when it comes to anxiety, there's that chemical cortisol, the stress hormone that is being released. When the person does exercise, what happens? There's also a chemical that is being released in the body, in the brain, they are called endorphins. Endorphins are happy hormones. So they counter the stress hormone. So you find that once this, even walking, just go for short walks, goes a long way, because now they are releasing chemicals that are reacting with the stress hormones. Also eating healthy, because you find that most of the time when somebody is anxious, they're not eating well. They're either eating too little or they're also eating too much. And even if they're eating too much, maybe they are not eating healthy, they're eating maybe junks. So you find that eating a balanced diet goes a long way. Also, we encourage relaxation techniques, meditation, yoga. You know, there are things that people can do at home that can help them. Also music. They've said music is therapy. They say music is food to the soul. So you find that even listening to music goes a long way in helping somebody who has anxiety or is having stresses. We also encourage people to do yoga, meditation, and also just to be self-aware, like what is happening. Are there issues in my life, problems that needs to be solved? Because sometimes you're having problems that needs to be solved. You're not solving them, you're just sweeping them under the carpet, and this increases your anxiety. Yes.
And Doc, now I'll ask you, is there a way we can protect ourselves or prevent anxiety, you know? Yeah.
I think just being self-conscious and also just trying to control the things that you can control. Because sometimes you find there are people who are always worried about things that they cannot control. For example, they are worried that today it will rain and I will not be able to reach home. So that one gives them anxiety to a point now they are thinking, I did not carry an umbrella, I don't have a coat, what will happen, you know. So that now makes them unable to do the activities. So I think sometimes it's good for us to accept the things that we can change and the things that we cannot change completely. And also maybe try and also have social support, you know, like talking to a person goes a long way. Also, you find that sometimes also writing down, keeping a journal goes a long way in helping you, because now you're able now to bring your thoughts to the book. Then you're able to look and observe and see what is happening in your life. Yes.
And from your day-to-day operations, you are a counseling psychologist, and I know you meet with these clients. What are the, when you're speaking with your clients, what are the common causes, or the common, not causes really, the common types of anxiety do we have? Is it fear? Are we talking about phobia? Or what do people fear really? Yeah.
Yeah. So you find when it comes to fear or worry, people are always worried about a lot of things. They are worried about something will happen. They are worried that they will not be able to do what they were supposed to do. They are worried that they will not perform as best as they can, which is always there with us, but now it becomes a disorder when it prevents you from doing what you are supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now let's get to different groups of people. Let's first begin by addressing, for example, you are in it's now counseling session for us here to all our viewers.
Yeah.
Let's say you are in your employment, you are working for a company and you just get some news that, which is common, there is going to be a retrenchment. Of course, you expect so much fear, or there is also going to be some promotions and retrenchment. So how do you help employees in a company who are just expecting some bad news and also something that will change their lives forever? How do they prepare themselves for such news?
I think maybe the cognition, like their thoughts, like what is happening in their mind, what are they telling themselves, what are they thinking about? I think being able to express, maybe just talking to a person, because sometimes you find that you are alone and you have all these constant thoughts, things are just moving up just around your mind. Sometimes just expressing to the next person and telling them, you know, this is what I'm feeling. I think just talking about it, to find that you just go back to your normal self. And also maybe just to try and do some relaxation techniques. As you're standing there, maybe you can just imagine you're somewhere where you're relaxed, somewhere that maybe it's okay, everything is relaxed. There are people who maybe when they go down to the coast, the ocean relaxes them. There are people when they go to a place where there are forest trees, relaxes them. Also taking deep breaths, where you assume that you're breathing in the sense of a flower, then you're blowing out, now blowing out the flower. Yeah, just that, taking in a deep breath and out. It goes a long way.
And from what I'm understanding from this conversation is that anxiety is really fear of the outcome. It could be positive or negative, but you are afraid. Your thoughts are more leaned to the negative part of it. So let's just stay with the employee-company relationship. Let's say you are anticipating for what you just talked about, and then your fears are confirmed. So how do you, how do you just pick yourself up and move on? How do you go about it? Yeah,
you find it's hard because maybe whatever you were fearing has been confirmed. You are fearing maybe now I'll be among those ones that will be retrenched. I am among those ones that will lose their job. So you find that whatever you're fearing now has been confirmed. So I think just learning to cope with the situation, because sometimes now the coping now goes a long way. Yeah, because sometimes you can't prevent what will happen to our lives, but we can always predict our reactions and also cope. Like how are we coping what is happening in our lives?
Yeah,
yes.
And just before now we go to the young people, there's also another concern. As an expert, where do you think we are in terms of seeking these counseling sessions for anxiety? Is it something that you're saying as a country or Africa we are ignoring, which is a problem? How would you rate us? Yeah,
I think we still have a long way to go when it comes to seeking services. You find that a person now understands this is not the normal anxiety. Like I'm always anxious, yes, but it goes away. But now this one is not going away. It has been there constantly for the last 6 months. It is affecting my day-to-day activities, my relationship with others, my work. But you find that somebody just is hoping against hope that it shall be well. So I think as a country we are yet to reach there. But I think people slowly by slowly, because we are creating awareness, it goes a long way. That's why we are always encouraging people, because sometimes find that people they fear this one-on-one. Because now somebody will see me, and people feel that when I'm seeking help, it is a sign of weakness. That's why we are encouraging people to now embrace e-therapy, where now you can have a phone session with a person from the other end and they are not seeing you. Yeah.
Is it operational, the e-therapy?
Yeah. So you find that we have a Facebook page called Thalia Psychotherapy, where now what we are doing is that we're encouraging people to now book. Once they book, now they're able to get in touch with us. Now we're able to do the phone therapy, whereby now that person now calls us, we're able to have a session over the phone. So that fear of that somebody will know where I am, somebody will see me, will see my face, they will know my name. Now at least we're able now to counter that, because you can call and we are not seeing you, and can be able to give you the help that is much needed. Yes.
And how cost effective are the services? Maybe some people will say that's a reach, people are fair.
Yeah.
I can't just first help us understand, is it a reach families or the rich people's affair anxiety, because they believe counseling psychologists, just the rich who needs to see them, because the mental health is usually associated with these people. Let's address the cost effectiveness for these services. Are they affordable?
So you find that most of the time there's that myth. And the unfortunate thing is that we are taking care of our physical health. If now I feel that I have a headache and my body is not okay, I will rush to the doctor. And I will not care the consultation. There are people who go and they pay 2,000, 3,000 for consultation, and you find that all tests have been done and there's nothing. So it is pointing out to mental health. So imagine if I had first gone to a mental health professional maybe I would have, you know, I would have cut down on the cost. Because sometimes people say that mental health services are expensive, but look at the point that you've gone to different specialists to address the physical aspect of you, and maybe it is mental. So you find that the amount of money you've used seeking services, they would have come down if you first went to a mental health professional. So I think it's for people to always consider that physical health and mental health go hand in hand. You can't say you're physically healthy if you're not mentally healthy. Yeah.
And every parent, Doc, would want to raise children who are really confident, no anxiety. So when you're talking about anxiety and raising up your kids, is there a way, is there a way you can do a background check for your children that, or the way you raise up your kids, in other words, will it affect them when they grow up? Will it affect their esteem issues, which you're linking to the anxiety disorder? Or how would you say? Then number two, when, for example, you have a child who has the disorder, again, is it affecting the relationship that they have with the rest of the family? And can it also be a contributing factor to some members also finding themselves in such situations?
Yeah, you find when it comes to parenting, especially when it comes to maybe the parenting styles we are using as parents, you find that there are people who are authoritative. Authoritative meaning that they're able to talk to their children and they're able to come to an agreement, you see. They're able to know, tell their children, this is what I expect of you, and they're able to negotiate with their children. But you find there are those parents who are authoritarian, in that they say, do this. There's no...
Is that a contributing factor?
Sometimes it does. We can't say per se it is.
They cannot question.
Yes. So you find that this child grows up knowing that I can't ask questions. You know, you find that their self-esteem also is affected, because now they can't, the parent is always telling them what to do. And you know, most of the time we want to bring up children that are independent, those children that can make their own decision. But you find that parents, because of maybe how we are raising up our kids, we are so authoritarian. Whatever I say, you do it, and there is no questioning about it. Yeah,
we're always right.
Yeah, we are always right. And you know, sometimes it's maybe for the little ones as they grow, because you have to make boundaries. You have to make them maybe do the things they're supposed to do. But over time, are you teaching them how to negotiate? Because these are things that they will have to do later on in life. So I think just to get a balance between the two, that you're able to tell your children, I don't want you to do this because of A, B, C, D. So once they understand the reasons why I'm not supposed to do this, then it becomes easier for them. Unlike when you're telling them, do this and don't ask questions. Yes.
It's a contributing factor.
It does, yeah.
So as a parent, how am I able to identify that, because every child is different, how am I able to identify that once I treat this child this way, it's leading to this sort of a problem? Is there a way as a parent, are there pointers as a parent I'm able to see with my child that I think all is not well and I need to change the way I handle my children or my child?
I think you find that most of the time children's behavior will always point out at something. So you find that maybe this child is a child, maybe a child who doesn't say much. They keep to themselves. They're always fearful. They want to stay somewhere in a corner. You find that even when they are with other kids, they can't explore, they can't play. You find them, they always want to hide somewhere. They don't want to be seen. So I think you have, as parents, always be constantly looking at the children's behavior. Or how are they behaving? Are there pointers of too much fear? Are there phobias? Are there things that you find that this child is not able to do, yet other children are able to do? They are not confident. Because you find that most of the time, you find that the child's self-esteem has been affected. So behavior will show you that this child is not okay. Yes.
And you mentioned that anxiety can lead to some heart problem or complications. We also asking you, anxiety and stroke, can it cause stroke?
So when it comes to anxiety, you find that it predisposes a person. So you find that a person can be at a higher risk of developing stroke, especially when it comes to now to the older, the adults, guys that maybe are above 40, 50 years. So you find that when it comes now to anxiety, first we say that there's that response, the fight, the flight response. So you find that this person now, there's an impending danger. So you find that now your body is reacting. Either it's going to fight or it's going to flee. So what happens is that the processes in the body are not going on the way they are supposed to do. So there's this alertness that the brain has to be able to tackle the impending danger or the impending problem. So you find that over time what happens, the blood that is being pumped to the heart, over time now there's a change. So you find that this person now can be predisposed to a heart attack or they can be predisposed to a stroke. Yeah, because the processes are being affected in the body.
And finally, Doc, just leave us with a few tips. When, for example, you are going through anxiety, how do you manage it? How do you manage anxiety to just ensure it's not going to overrule what you're supposed to do? Just a few tips. We are winding up.
Yeah. So maybe to the viewers, I think self-awareness goes a long way, just to be able to identify the signs and symptoms that we've talked about when it comes to anxiety. That is one. Also, social support, talking about it. When you feel that whatever I'm feeling is not normal, talk to a person so that maybe that person can be able to help you. Also, do the relaxation techniques that we said. Exercises, deep breathing, yoga, meditation. Then seek mental health services when you feel, now this one, I've tried all this and I'm not getting ahead. Yeah.
All right, and that's all the time we had for the show, Dr. Ruth Mwaura. It's always a pleasure to have you with us here. We highly appreciate. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Purity Museo. Remember, the show continues tomorrow, same place, same time. But just before we could say goodbye to you, we want to leave you with our home remedy segment, and enjoy your time.